it clearly wouldn't be good. I'm not predicting that. But what I think this issue is a critically important one, because it's very difficult for governments to design a program that is going to be effective and going to be fair to taxpayers, a program to keep people in their homes if they don't want to stay in their homes. And so a big part of what we focused on was bringing the private sector together to keep those into their homes that could afford to stay in the homes and wanted to stay there. Now, when you look at the crisis, I think part of the reason that so many experts, so many people didn't foresee housing as being the cause, and count me among those, was that if you look at our country since World War II, residential housing prices have generally gone up. We haven't had nationwide declines, and mortgages have generally been perceived to be safe investments. And so when you get the kind of decline we've had in housing prices, that it really destroys wealth across the country, but it also changes behavior. Because historically, everyone that had a mortgage would claw, fight, do whatever it took to make the mortgage payment and avoid default. And of course, when the home is worth less than the mortgage, behaviors tend to change.
What do you see?
Well, I'm very much concerned if home prices decline from here. I don't think they're going to. In other words, they seem to be bottoming out. The reason I am is that during 2005 and 2006, as I recall, there were 8 million home purchases with so-called conventional conforming mortgages with the 20% down payment. That down payment is gone. And we have this very large block of homeowners who are right on the edge of tilting down into that underwater category. Fortunately, the evidence suggests that the vast majority, as Hank was implying, of these types of homeowners, that is those with the standard conventional mortgages, do continue to pay on their mortgages, even if the value of the homes is below the market price. What worries me particularly is that there is a very large block that will be thrown on the market, I mean, people starting to foreclose, if prices go down significantly from here.
Let me move on. I want to talk about the deficit, and I also want to talk about taxes. Here are the deficit projections from the president's 2011 budget, and the numbers are frankly staggering. If you look at the deficit for 2010, 1.56 trillion, and through 2015, they estimate it comes down with 751.9 billion. How serious is this, Secretary Paulson, assuming also that 10-year projections are often wrong?
Oh, I just have no doubt that it is by far the most serious long-term challenge we as a nation face. All these other issues, economic issues, are minor compared to that. And it's a generational issue, because there's no way we're going to deal effectively with the deficit without reforming the entitlement programs, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. And it doesn't have to be a crisis. This is something that can be handled. But one of the things I talk about in my book, and one of the lessons that just hit me right between the eyes and being in Washington, is it's very, very difficult to get Congress to act on anything that's big and difficult and controversial if there's not an immediate crisis. And so what it's going to take to get leaders on both sides to come together and deal with this, I think, is a huge question.
And Dr. Greenspan, Larry Summers, one of the president's top economics advisors, has said in the past, he's asked a very provocative question, which is, how long can the world's biggest borrower remain the world's biggest power?
Not indefinitely, because there's no doubt that if the United States continues down the road that Hank has been correctly identifying, we're going to find that our ability to borrow is going to get restrained, because throughout our history we have always maintained a capital cushion, a cushion between our borrowing capacity on one hand and the level of debt on the other. That is beginning to shrink. And if we get to the point where we're having difficulty selling our security, our treasury issues, then interest rates begin to move, and our ability to move internationally to essentially be the major currency, the major economy, the major economic power in the world is significantly diminished. History tells us that great powers, when they've gotten into very significant fiscal problems, have ceased to be great powers.
The part of the fix here, according to the budget, it has to do with the issue of taxes. Here's how the Wall Street Journal put it in a headline on Tuesday, and that is that the wealthy face a tax increase. Those Bush-era tax cuts are going to be allowed to expire by this administration. Secretary Paulson, is that a bad idea?
Here's how I look at taxes. I believe what we need is broad-based tax reform, and the kind of tax reform where it doesn't discourage investments and savings. There are incentives for those. Right now, we have a tax system that is biased toward consumption. It's and we as a people save too little, invest too little, borrow too much. So I would like to see wholesale, broad-based tax reform, and I think that's clearly got to be.
My question is whether the Bush tax cuts expiring is a bad idea.
Well, I've got to say, anything right now that is going to in effect be a tax increase is got to be questioned. And an expiring tax cut is a tax increase. But I'm going beyond that, because I really do believe that we are going to need to take a different approach to a number of things, taxes being one of them, housing policies being another.
Dr. Greenspan, the tax cuts?
I agree with what Hank is saying. I think the thing that disturbed me most in the last week or two was when the discussion was involved in, I believe, in the Senate on the issue of forming a commission, a congressionally authorized commission. As I read it, there was a 97-0 vote to exclude Social Security from the deliberations of that commission. That said to me that we've gotten to the point in this country where spending is untouchable. I have no doubts that we have to raise taxes in order to close this huge deficit. But we cannot do it wholly on the tax side, because that would significantly erode the rate of growth in the economy and the tax base, and the revenues that would be achieved would be far less than anybody expects. We have to recognize the fact that one of the things that we have to do, as tough as it's going to be, is that benefits are going to have to be paired in conjunction with tax increases to resolve this very serious long-term budget problem.
In our remaining moment here, Secretary Paulson, I have to ask you about financial regulation, about bonuses on Wall Street. Do you see real changes happening on Wall Street? Are you frustrated by the level of bonuses we're seeing?
Well, you asked two questions, and so firstly, there's no doubt that compensation on Wall Street, I think, is out of whack and been out of whack for some time. And I understand why the American people are unhappy, because, you know, in our system, we expect those that take risks to really bear their own losses. But I would like to see that frustration, that anger channeled toward regulatory reform, and I just think that's very, very critical. And to me, one thing that is absolutely essential is that we get strong resolution authority so that in the future, any type of financial institution, when it faces failure, that it is liquidated, and liquidated in a way in which the taxpayer is not going to have to come up in again and prop up or bail out a financial institution.
All right, we will leave it there.